Welcome to the show, Sejal.
Thank you, Rob. So excited to be here.
You know how long I've been looking forward to having this conversation. I want you to take a guess.
Since we talked.
There you go. I mean, you're good. You're so good. No, because I think everyone's going to appreciate this. The moment you and I met and we talked virtually, uh, there was some obvious connection there. An alignment of values, perhaps a bit of personality, the alignment of personality and temperament, et cetera. But one of the things I've enjoyed about you in the interactions we've had since we first met, as much as your experience, like you have tremendous experience in so many different areas, but it's your love for people that it didn't take long to really jump out to me because of the questions you asked me, you wanting to get to know me. And so I want to just say thank you publicly for the attention to detail, your encouragement, your support without even fully knowing me, just based more on who you are as opposed to what you do. And I just don't run across too many people that are like that. Now I'm finding myself, the more I'm hanging out with like-minded, like-hearted people, at least to some degree, I'm finding more and more of those individuals, but I just, you're a rare gem that way. You're a gift, and I really, really appreciate it. And so I wanted to say thank you.
Oh my God. Thank you, Rob. No, I felt the same exact way when we got off. I mean, the energy between us that was both, received and given, it was just powerful. I mean, I just remember that conversation like it was yesterday. And I was like, wow, talk about stories. And just, you opened up to me so quickly in that conversation. I remember it was like not even 5 minutes into us talking. It was more like 2 minutes. And you started telling me about your incredible story. And I was like, I am a huge fan of Rob Holman, and you're basically stuck with me now. So
I'm sticking with Sage.
yes.
Hey, speaking of story, I figured a wonderful way to kind of start off our time would letting people get to know who you are a little bit. So what would be maybe a story anywhere along your journey that would give us a little bit more insight and have us experience who Sejal truly is?
Yeah. So, I would say the story that comes to mind is really when my son was born, which was 10 years ago. I really feel like that was the moment where I found my anchor. And I literally feel like that's when my life truly started. And when I say that, I mean, where my identity of who I truly am, really, I started focusing more on that. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that because that's really what led me to doing this second TEDx talk. And the minute I saw him, Rob, I just felt something inside of me like come alive.
Mm.
And it changed let's say the trajectory of my life, because at that point I was an attorney. I was working as a defense attorney at a law firm, making six figures, and I was doing I was in an area of law that I enjoyed doing, but I knew it wasn't the right fit for what I wanted to do. And the minute I saw him, I said, I want to be at home with him. And
Yes.
so I left that job and said, how am I going to do this? How am I going to be at home and still earn enough money to pay the bills? And that's where, sort of this, I would say the second chapter of my life started. So that's a great place for us to start with.
Well, I can so appreciate that. I remember my firstborn, he's 14 now. And I can remember like yesterday there was a moment, Sejal, where my wife was not in the room. It was just my son and I. And he was all swaddled up and everything. And I remember looking at him and I said to myself, maybe thank goodness there's no one in the room. I probably said it out loud, who knows, but I know I at least said it to myself quietly. And I was like, that's my boy. And so not only do I appreciate what you just shared there, it hits a very deep place in my heart. And so whether people are listening and they are parents, or they have nieces or nephews or family members, even close friends of little ones, I think we can all appreciate that. Kids and young ones hit a very deep place in our heart because of so many reasons why. But I think in part because of the innocence,
Yes.
because of the purity that the children do bring. And man, is there something that we can really learn as we look upon and we engage with children in our life, perhaps it's about igniting the child in each one of us
That's
all
it.
over again, you know?
That's exactly it. And you get it, because as I listened to you talking about it, it brings me right back to that moment. It was that exact thought went through my head, was that this is my opportunity to do this differently, to protect him, to serve him, to ensure that he doesn't have to go through the painful sort of experiences that I went through. And that just became my anchor, you know, and it's not, it is about having a child, you know, because he came early. So he was 6 weeks early and he was only 4 pounds. So that had a lot to do with it, because I'm
Sure.
looking at this little thing that looks like a frog, right? Like it looked like he was like this big. I'm like, oh, you know, and you're like, I have to protect this human being. Like, this is my job. And as a mother, you know, it just, like I said, like a switch got flipped inside of me. It was like instantaneously.
Yeah.
And, you know, most people be like, oh my God, you're quitting this 6-figure salary. Like, what? You worked your whole life to get here. And I didn't even think about that. It didn't even matter to me. I was like, I'm going to figure this out, but this is my priority. And it has been since that moment. Like, I made all my career choices, my life decisions. That is my non-negotiable. And that has to go through that filter. If it's going to take me away from him, you know, because when he got a little bit older, so I did a lot of like side hustle and trying to get little jobs here and there. But when he got a little bit older, I was like, I got to get a steady income, you know. And so I went back to work full time for a couple of years, and I was miserable, Rob. I was miserable because I was missing out on key moments in his life. I wanted to spend more time with him, and I started going back into working around the clock again. And I said, I'm just not doing that. And so I did it for 2 years, and then had that moment of, I am going to miss out on this human being's life, and that is my priority. And so I that's when I started my own company, Train Extra, and really focused in on what I'm doing right now.
Now, you've had so many influential people in your life and in your life's journey, I'm sure. And, you know, you'd mentioned your son, the impact, the influence he's had on you ever since he was born.
Yes.
Who else would you say has been one of the greatest influential people in your life that's really helped, whether it be encourage you, see seeds of greatness in you that you couldn't see in yourself? Does anyone come to mind?
Yeah, it would have to be my father, you
Mm,
know, and because, you know, when I was growing up with sort of, you know, dealing, I was, you know, I was subjected to discrimination and harassment at a very young age growing up. So there weren't a lot of support and resources that I could have turned to for how do I deal with this when I'm going through the pain that I'm feeling, right? There wasn't really anybody there. And then sort of the identity, sort of living between the Indian and American culture, which is what I talk about in the second TEDx talk. There was really, again, nobody there to support me, but he was there, you know, and he was able to sort of help me see things from different perspectives, because of what I was going through as a child. I found myself angry a lot. You know, I felt like I had a lot of rage inside of me because I didn't know what to do with what I was going through. And so he saw that. And so he was the person that we would have like these deep conversations, you know, and he would say things that at the time I'm like, what are you talking about? Like,
yeah.
are you defending these kids? Are you taking these people's sides? They're hurting your daughter. Don't you see it? You know, and so you know, but when I would hear him talk about it, and later on when I would think about what he was saying, it made sense. So like one of the things he would say to me is that when people are hurting inside, when they themselves are hurting, they tend to hurt other people around them. So when I would come home crying from school after being bullied, he would say, you know, those people are suffering too, you know, just like
Mm,
you're suffering, you know,
mm,
and again, it's those kinds of things that got ingrained in who I am today, and really sort of helped me see a different perspective. You know, he had the ability to be empathetic towards people in this other realm. Like, I don't even think I have that level of empathy that my father did. And he was able to feel other people's pain, you know, to the point of where he'd be like giving money to people, and he'd always be sharing these stories with me. And maybe it didn't make sense to me when I was growing up, but as I got older, I was able to see the value and gain his wisdom from that.
Where did your dad get that? You know, was he just kind of born with that? Was he influenced by his family, you
Yeah.
know, environment? Like, what would you say?
Great question. No, I think he was born like that.
Mhm.
I think we're all born like that, honestly, Rob.
I
I
like
do.
that.
I
Yeah.
really do. And I mean, I look at myself, and other people that are empathetic. I think we're all born like that, but
Mhm.
then our lived experiences, what we're subjected to, the pain we go through, our families, our environments, they shape us and they
Yeah.
slowly chip away at that, and it goes back to doing the work of getting back to your true self. And that really is really what I was hoping to accomplish with the second TEDx talk,
I
is
really
to help
appreciate
people
that.
on that journey. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so good. So, what do you really want your legacy to be? Like, what is it at the end of the day? This is as many listeners throughout the world know that this season 3 of Inside Out Leadership is all about legacy. And we're listening to you. We're listening to who you are and what makes you come alive. And what, so for you, what is it that you really hope for? What do you want your legacy to be?
Yeah, I mean, the most important thing for me is that my son, it just remembers me as a person who was kind, who was respectful, who was able to inspire other people. That's really what gets me up out of bed, is how can I serve, and really being able to help somebody go through a tough situation is the most important thing to me, because I longed for that. I wish I would have had somebody helping me during those painful times. And there were people, there were people along the way. Absolutely. I wouldn't be here today if it hadn't been those people. But that's what I want to be remembered for. It's not about what I own or how much money I made. I never cared about any of those things. To me, it's she made a difference, a
Yeah.
positive difference in this world. And this talk really is it for me.
Mhm.
I was saying this to somebody, like, are you going to do any more? I'm like, nope, I have no desire to do any more TEDx talks. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm good. This is standing there on that stage in front of my son in the audience. This is my legacy talk. And I'm happy with that. That's all I needed.
Well, that's amazing. And that's where I want to double down a little bit on the TEDx talk. I mean, most people are like, you've spoken once at a TEDx, like speaking, when they hear someone speaking, they're like, one time, let alone 2 times.
Mm.
And so you were back at it on the stage with the topic called, which I love this, by the way, go from longing to belonging. So what was it? Why did you feel such a need to get back on the stage? Obviously, you have a clear message on your heart. Was it to build off of your first message? Was it this burning desire? You're like, you know what? I've got a message that the world needs to share.
Mm.
I've got to share
You know what? No, I actually had no intention or
it.
desire to do a second TEDx talk. It's funny, but it's true. I
Yeah.
really didn't. They invited me. So I guess there were a couple people that were organizing it, were connected with me on LinkedIn. And it was in the Bay Area. I live in San Francisco Bay Area, and it was near my home. And so they had been following me, and they reached out to me and asked me if I would want to participate in their first TEDx event. And so until that point, I was good with the first one. I'm like, okay, but um, so when that happened, I started thinking about, yes, I did want to build off my first talk. But that's really where I started thinking about what is a message I want to send. And I wanted to do something that built off the first one, but shed a different part of my experience. And it was a no-brainer. I mean, as soon as I started thinking about it, within like 24 hours, I was like, I want to talk about this duality that I dealt with, of being, born into a traditional Indian family, being raised as inside the home as, we're eating Indian food, we're wearing Indian clothes, it's the Indian traditional religion, everything, and then stepping outside of your home and being in the American culture, and now you're expected to fit into that. It's like night and day difference, right? And so that duality was a defining experience for me in my childhood. So that's where I started thinking, okay, this is what I want to talk about. But then, like, this is everything happens for a reason, because that same exact week, I pick up my son from school, and I'm still thinking about, okay, the story I want to tell. And I pick him up, and I could see something was off. And he told me this story about how he felt excluded by one of his friends. He felt left out. And it just came together. Within a week of being invited, I was like, I want to combine our two stories of what I've gone through. And I want to show, just how he handled it. And when someone is supported, when someone feels like they belong, how they respond to situations versus someone like me who wasn't. And so I wanted to show both sides of, and give people some practical ways of how we harness our power of exclusion and go from longing to belonging.
And practical ways you did. Real quick point. I mean, to have your son present at that too, I can only imagine as a parent, as a mom, like, I mean, there he is. Was he just right in the front rows looking at mom and just,
He
I
was
mean,
right there. Oh yeah. I mean, I practiced over and over again with him, obviously. And
yeah,
but just having him sit there and watch me do this. Cause he was there when I was doing the first one, but I did that one on video, right? So he saw
yeah.
me go through that, but it's a whole different experience when
Oh,
you're on stage and you're looking out there and you're looking at the person, you're like, this is for you, buddy. This is
uh-huh.
all for you. I mean, would I want millions of people to watch my TEDx talk? Of course, because I think the message is important, but I trust the universe that it's going to reach whoever needs to hear it. But to
That's
me, that person in the room is,
right.
that was it, and I wrote it in a way that would make sense to him
Yeah. Mhm.
first and foremost, but also, build in all those strategies so that it could be applied to a lot of different situations. Because obviously, as you know, everybody feels left out or like they don't belong. It's something that we all go through. So I wanted it to speak to everybody. I wanted to be inclusive of everybody,
Mhm.
right? So that they can apply this framework and not have to go as long as I did, who, just suffering in silence, basically,
Yeah.
right? So
Well, I love the framework, the acronym POWER that you use and the framework in that because it really helps guide people. And it's simple but powerful. I mean, some of the most, powerful things in the world are simple because, and so how you lay it out, and I just want to do it for our listeners for a moment. The P really stands for address your pain. The O and the W, be open and willing. Then we have renew your energy, the E in that, renew your energy.
yeah,
And then the R, celebrate the real you.
yes,
So, question I have for you relating to pain doesn't take long. We don't have to go very far to find out there's a whole lot of people in this world and in our world that are filled with a lot of pain.
yes,
Even people that are covering it up, it tends to seep out and we know they're in pain. Okay.
yes.
So, like, do you feel that in today's day and age, here we are now coming out of COVID and everything we've endured with the pandemic for the last 3 years. And some people are like, I can finally breathe again. But do
Mhm.
you feel like people admitting, acknowledging their pain is becoming easier and easier
Mm.
or not so much the case? Where do you land there?
I don't know. I don't know if it's easier, because I don't think it's ever easy to acknowledge your pain. I mean, if you're supported and you're loved and you feel like you belong, hopefully you start doing that earlier in life. That you're communicative, you're open to having those conversations with people that can support you, so that you can work through that pain and know that you don't have to keep it all bottled up inside like I did growing up. But it's never easy. It's always hard, and everybody's on their different journey. What I will say about your question, though, is that I do feel that more people are becoming more vulnerable
Hmm.
and realizing that they can find spaces where they can be vulnerable. Like, they don't have to keep it inside. And like when the pandemic happened, that's really where I started doing so much more. So like my journey started when he was born, but I was a mother. I was running my businesses, and you really need to be present and make time to get to that level of vulnerability, which is something we just don't have. And COVID forced us all to get there, right? We were at home. We
Mhm.
were with the people that we lived with, our families, our significant others. It sort of forced you to go inward, to take a look at, like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this job that I'm miserable with? Why am I living with this person? It forced us to reevaluate our experience and to decide, to make decisions. Do I want to continue doing this, or do I want to take my power back and do something differently? And that's what forced I think more people
Mhm.
to do that sort of self-reflection, to do that sort of pivot, to say,
Mhm.
you know what, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to put up with a toxic work environment. I'm not going to stay in a marriage that I'm miserable and lonely in, right? It forced people to make these decisions that before it was sort of like, I'm just going to survive. I'm just going to get through life. And it just changed that for a lot of people. It made us realize, wow, everything can change in a minute. And it did
Sure
for a
can.
lot of us.
Yeah, so
And
true.
you know this way better than I do. Your story is like,
So continuing along the line here with the O and being open to possibilities. You know, you acknowledge your pain, as difficult and challenging as that can be. When we are open to possibilities, you know, what happens out of that place? I mean, what transpires?
so, first thing, like you say, you want to be open to facing your pain, right? So it's
Mhm.
acknowledging it, but then you got to do something about it, right? You can acknowledge it. Like, I knew where my anger and rage was coming from. I didn't know exactly, was it what I was going through at home? Was it going, but I knew there was pain, right? So I acknowledged it, but what is it that I'm going to do about it, right? So I ended up denying it, right? I ended up denying it because I didn't want anyone else to know I was in pain, especially not those people that were causing it, right? And so I ended up trying to numb it for a long period
Mm.
of time, right? And that didn't work out so well, right? I mean, lucky to be alive right now. Let's just put it that way. But the O was really important because when you finally get to a place where you're ready to do something and you're willing to address your pain, what you realize is, first of all, you're not the only one. There are so many other people that are feeling pain, and once you start addressing it, I know for me and a lot of people that I talk to about this topic, you're able to identify
Mhm.
and relate to other people who have experienced that similar type of pain. The situation, the experience might be different, but that pain that they're feeling from that exclusion, you're able to spot that, and so that sort of helps a lot. But that only works if you're open. If
Mhm.
you're open to addressing it, if you're open to empathizing with the other person, you stay curious to learning about other people's experiences, right? And when you start doing this, you're able to see the bigger picture. So you kind of come out of your own experience. And then over time, it's not something that happens overnight. It's a work in progress, right? Like,
Yeah.
so I don't know if that truly answers your
Oh,
question.
it does. And it also leads into the W, which is willingness, because you touched on not only, you know, in and through this openness, there's a willingness to
Yes,
see beyond yourself in a
that's
sense and
right.
begin to understand that other people are struggling. They have their own challenges, their own pain. And thus, in that, there's an opportunity then for stronger connections
Yes,
with people. It doesn't happen overnight, I'm
that's right.
sure. And so thank you for that. You know, you came up with a quote which I so adore, Sejal, and its true personal power
Mm.
comes from within. This really comes from the energy piece, you know, deep within.
Yes.
A pinpointed question I have for you is how do we best work through change from within? Like, it's one thing to talk about it, like, all right,
Yes.
it's deep seated, it's deep down, right? The
Yeah, yes.
spiritual place in which is in each one of us. But like, how do we best work through it? How do we navigate through in
Yeah.
that vulnerable, deep place that sometimes it's even difficult for words to describe what we're going through or how we feel? Any words
Yes.
of advice or wisdom there?
And this is the beautiful thing. It's different for everybody, right? So for me, it was a lot of observing my thoughts, paying attention to the thoughts I was having. So if I was around a group of people and all of a sudden I'm feeling alone, picking up on that and then asking yourself, why? Why am I feeling this way? Like, I'm in a room full of people here and yet I'm feeling alone. Instead of just ignoring those feelings or those thoughts that you're having, to really sit down and make time to reflect.
Mm.
We don't really spend a lot of time reflecting. We go so quickly, we're on one thing to the next. So after I get done with this call, I'm on another thing, and we don't really make that time to sit down and say, why am I feeling this way and what can I do to change that, right? And that's where that energy piece becomes really important, because I had a lot of friends. I had a lot of people in my life as I was growing up. I had a lot of good times, right? But I didn't feel that sense of belonging. And it's nothing to say anything negative about those people that were in my life. It's just that I needed to give and receive a different kind of energy. I've always, and you and I talked about this during that first conversation, is that we're both givers.
Yeah.
We give our energy. But then that, for me, I was always taking whatever kinds of energy I was getting, and it wasn't uplifting me. It wasn't helping me grow. It was almost the opposite. It made me feel like, if I was like, describe it like a bird who had its wings clipped, right?
Mm,
Like I couldn't fully go and continue my growth journey, because the people that I was surrounding myself with, a lot of them were negative, or they were dealing with their own situations where they weren't in that growth mindset. And so as soon as I started to surround myself with people that were of a growth mindset, that were positive, that were uplifting, that were supportive, not only when things are bad, but also when things are good, everything started to change in my
mhm,
life. And I started attracting more of those people like yourself. You're incredible.
mm.
And when that starts to happen, that's where I was doing my inner work as well, right? So you
Yeah,
kind of need to do both at the same time, but having people around who support you to continue that journey, because it's hard. It's
it
hard to
is.
go through that. But when you see that, wait a second, not everybody is going to make me feel excluded.
Mm,
Not everybody's going to give me that sense of lack that I was
yeah,
feeling, right?
yeah.
And so the more you do that, then it's just like, I call it, it's like a breath of fresh air. That's what it
Mhm,
feels like, right?
yeah,
You're like, all right, let me let all the other stuff go. And
yeah.
then that's when you start letting it all go. And then over time, that pain that I had felt in my childhood or when I was growing up, I was able to let go of it, right? Because
Mhm.
you're taking in fresh energy, fresh air, and you're able to exhale out some of that stuff that's tethering you.
Mm. Okay. So the R is celebrate the real you. So, yeah, what can you share about celebrating you? Like, because focus on me. I mean, I want to care for other people. Because a lot of leaders listening right now, they are caring for so many other people. And they
Mm-hmm.
almost feel like if they put too much time and attention on themselves, it's going to take it off of others.
Yeah.
But they've heard from me, Sejal. I know you're in complete agreement. It's like, at what sacrifice? We've got to
That's
make
so true.
sure that we're on point, taking care of ourselves. If kids at a very young age need rest time, why can't adults at 40, 50, 60 year
That's
old,
right.
60 years old also have some rest time? And in that, taking the time that's necessary for you to celebrate you. So, what could you leave behind for us and be as practical as you want to be as it relates to celebrating the real you?
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. Time is always going to keep moving. There are always going to be things for us to do. That to-do list never ends,
That's so
right?
true.
And if you are you on that to-do list, that's the point, right? And
Mm,
so whatever works for you, like I actually in my calendar put in me time, right? And that could be something as me. What I love to do is take long baths. I love putting the lavender balls in there, candles, and in my own bathroom, just sit there for an hour, and just think about myself and celebrate myself. And what I mean by that is also accepting all the different parts of you, not feeling like you have to hide anything with you. And the more you do that with yourself, and that even means like looking in the mirror, right? And saying, I am proud of you right now. I am so proud of everything that you're doing. Like my son and I, we have these three little habits that we do, right? We wake up, we always say we're grateful. What are we grateful for? List three things.
yeah.
And part of that is celebrating you. I'm grateful for my health. I'm
Mhm.
grateful that I'm able to wake up right now and get through my day when I have like 50 things on my plate, right? But encouraging yourself and as you continue. So the other one is also like, looking in the mirror and saying, I am beautiful on the inside, just like I am on the out, whatever affirmations you want that make you feel good, right? And then at the end, and then I like to do this thing where I put my feet on the ground, that helps ground me. So I'll put my feet down and say, today I'm grounded. It's going to be a fantastic day. And I know I'm going to have an incredible conversation with Rob, right? So, but grounding myself to say, I got this. I trust you. I believe in you, and we're going to do this, right? So whatever there's so many different ways to celebrate the real you, but the most important thing is showing up
Mhm.
as the real you, as your authentic, whatever that looks like for you. Because somebody asked me that question when I posted my TEDx talk. They're like, well, what is the real you? How do you know what the real you is? And I go, there is no answer, my friend. But if you figure that out, let me know, because I don't know. I'm still working on it, right? But it's whatever makes you feel good, and whatever where you could show up and not only just show up, but also talk about who you are in an authentic way to say, no matter whether you look at my podcast, whether you look at me when I'm having a conversation with a friend, you're going to see the same Sejal, because this is who I am. It's much easier being me than putting on all these different masks and putting, which I've gotten really good at doing. I've had to do that. So, it's like when I read Brene Brown's book, Braving the Wilderness, I was like, oh my God, we are soul sisters. Like, we have seriously gone through very parallel experiences in our lives. Like, her book really spoke to me, and I was like, yes. And then as I talk to more and more people, it speaks to a lot of us because we've gone through these similar situations, right?
This message of yours, you, Sejal, and your life journey that's led you up to this point in this time, in this moment, is relevant for everyone. I want to encourage everyone that's listening right now, you need to find that TEDx talk. And trust me, we're going to put it in the meeting notes. That's a given. So we'll have the link there for you. Is there a real quick place as we're kind of, as I like to say, Sejal, we're starting to land the plane. Yeah. You and I could talk for the next 2-3 hours and just even begin to scratch a bit more of a surface. But I want to direct people. What's the easiest way to get in contact with you, the TEDx talk? Mm-hmm. What would you say?
Yeah. So you can go to if you're on LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn all the time. I'm always posting about these topics of belonging and a lot of different leadership type topics. Connect with me on LinkedIn. It's right there, right on my profile. You can click on there, or you can go to my company's website, Train Extra, right? And it'll be on there as well.
Sejal, I'm going to end how I began and saying you are a tremendous gift. To everyone that has ever experienced you, come across you, who's listening now and feeling a connectedness with you. And quite frankly, the entire world, even people have never met you before, because your message is that powerful and it's that practical that it still goes out upon the world. And I look forward in the subsequent days, months, and years of those greatly impacted and inspired by your message that's compelled them to treat themselves more kindly, with more love. And in and out of that place, they're embracing the differences of those around them.
Yes. Thank
being
you
quick
so
to
much.
serve, being quick to encourage, being quick to support those around them within their sphere of influence. So thank you, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this. And I look forward to us doing more together. I would love that.
That sounds great. All right. For Sejal, I'm Robb Holman. Thank you for joining us on Inside Out Leadership today. So long.